Magandang buhay, Philippines! Today, we will embark on a journey to the fascinating history of language education in the Philippines. From pre-colonial times to present language policies, how profoundly shape our national identity, cultural landscape, and educational system. We will examine key policies, analyze their impact, and explore the ongoing challenge of balancing global competitiveness with the preservation of our rich linguistic heritage. Our timeline begins in the pre-Spanish era, a time of vibrant multilingualism with diverse indigenous languages thriving through oral traditions and interregional trade. The Spanish colonial period brought the imposition of Spanish, aiming to create a unified linguistic landscape. The 1768 Spanish-only ordinance, though ambitious, met with limited success. The American colonial era saw the introduction of English, laying the foundation of our modern education system through the 1901 Education Act and the Thomasite Program. The Commonwealth period witnesses efforts to establish a national language, culminating in the declaration of Tagalog as the basis for Filipino. The Japanese occupation briefly suppressed English, but the post-war era saw the adoption of the bilingual education policy, using both Filipino and English as media of instruction. There was no formal language policy in the pre-Spanish Philippines. Instead, organic multilingualism thrived. Diverse indigenous languages fostered rich oral traditions and facilitated inter-island trade, showcasing the archipelago's inherent linguistic diversity. This naturally occurring linguistic landscape positively impacted society by enabling cultural exchange and economic interaction. However, the lack of a standardized written system for many languages limited widespread literacy and potentially hindered the development of a unified national identity. The absence of a formal policy also meant no systematic effort to document or preserve these languages, leaving them vulnerable to later influences. This period laid the foundation for the Philippines' complex linguistic reality, highlighting the importance of language preservation efforts to protect its rich cultural heritage. The 1768 Spanish-only ordinance aimed to achieve linguistic unification in the Philippines under Spanish. Implementation involved the exclusive use of Spanish in schools, effectively suppressing indigenous languages, while a small linguistic elite benefited from access to Spanish education and opportunities. The policy overwhelmingly negatively impacted society. The suppression of native languages resulted in significant cultural loss and created linguistic inequality, marginalizing non-Spanish speakers. This policy dramatically reshaped the linguistic landscape, establishing Spanish as the dominant language while severely diminishing the use and prestige of the indigenous tongues. The long-term consequences continue to affect the Philippines' linguistic diversity today. The 1901 Education Act aimed to modernize the Philippines' education system and promote English proficiency. This was achieved through the construction of new schools and the training of teachers. While the policy increased literacy and access to global knowledge, it also marginalized Filipino languages and potentially led to a loss of cultural identity. This emphasis on English created a linguistic divide, privileging those who could speak it while diminishing the value of native tongues. The shift in the linguistic landscape had long-lasting effects, shaping the Philippines' multilingual reality today. Executive Order Number 134, issued in 1937, aimed to create a national language for the Philippines to foster unity. This was achieved by selecting Tagalog as the basis for the national language, which would later be known as Filipino. While the policy successfully fostered the development of Filipino as the unifying force, it also faced challenges in unifying diverse linguistic groups. The choice of Tagalog, while widely spoken, create a sense of linguistic inequality and marginalization for speakers of other languages. This policy contributed to the linguistic landscape by establishing a national language, but also highlighted the ongoing need to address linguistic diversity and ensure inclusivity. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines, a policy of English prohibition was implemented, aiming to suppress the use of English in education and society. This was achieved through the closure of English language schools and the promotion of Japanese language education. While the policy aimed to sever ties with the previous American colonial influence, it had a short-lived impact due to the brief duration of the occupation. The positive impact was a temporary boost to the use of Filipino languages, but the negative impact was the disruption of education and the potential for a setback in English proficiency. This policy contributed to the linguistic landscape by temporarily shifting the dominant language away from English, but its lasting effects were minimal due to the swift return of American influence after the war. The 1974 bilingual education policy aimed to balance the use of Filipino and English in the Philippines. It was implemented by using both languages in education, with specific subjects allocated each language. This policy successfully promoted both languages, fostering proficiency in both Filipino and English. However, challenges arose in effectively implementing the policy across all regions and socioeconomic levels. The lack of sufficient resources and trained teachers in some areas hindered the policy's full implementation, leading to disparities in language proficiency and educational opportunities. This policy contributed to the linguistic landscape by establishing a bilingual education system, but also highlighted the need for equitable access to quality education and language resources. Let's consider the question: how can the Philippines balance the need for global competitiveness with the preservation of local languages and cultures? The historical context reveals a complex interplay between language and national identity. Colonial policies prioritize English, leading to the marginalization of indigenous languages. However, the current mother tongue-based multilingual education policy acknowledges the importance of mother tongue-based education in early years, promoting stronger foundational literacy skills and cultural preservation. This approach recognizes that linguistic diversity is a strength, not a weakness. To achieve true balance, we need sustained investment in mother tongue education, teacher training, and the development of high-quality materials in all languages. We must also foster a national pride in linguistic heritage, promoting its use in various contexts, from media to the art. In conclusion, the history of language education in the Philippines is a story of both challenges and progress. Understanding the history is crucial for shaping the future of education and fostering a truly inclusive and equitable linguistic landscape. By valuing and preserving our diverse languages, we strengthen our national identity and ensure the future generations can benefit from the rich linguistic heritage of the Philippines. Thank you, listeners. Mabuhay! Thank you. Bye.